just feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college rule.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris. This is Dom. We're just a couple of comics. We're chatting about sports, and I think we're just going to get right into it today. Who are we talking about?
We're talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Heisman Trophy winner, Mr. Famous for doing lots of cool stuff, Ricky Williams. Everybody.
Well, I feel like he has a lot of different iterations of himself. Like the guy in college football, everybody was like, he was like the man. The guy in NFL, they were like, oh, this is the trouble guy. And then he became kind of like a bounce back story. So.
Yeah, a really incredible bounce back. He's a very interesting person, I'll say that.
Absolutely.
Like a very complex individual in a very good way,
yes.
I feel like. Ricky Williams, born May 21st, 1977, along with the twin sister Cassie, in San Diego, California.
Where?
San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah, his mom, Sandy, and Eric, which is Ricky's first name. Mm-hmm. 2 R's for that double dose of pimping for Idiocracy fans out there. His parents divorced by the time he was 6. At age 3, he has a very caring side to him. I read this story about how he would sit with his younger sister and help put her to bed. I'm sure there was a lot of marital issues going on in the house and kind of a rough upbringing. His dad had a second family, which was kind of interesting to read about.
3 kids in a second household. He had a famous second cousin. Mm-hmm. Who was that? Cecil Fielder.
That's right. Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
Look, Big Daddy. It's regular Daddy. He had a lot of anger as a kid, which I'm sure is very prevalent in situations like his as far as parental issues. His mom took him to counseling at age 6. And then they found out, much like Tony Hawk, he was a smart kid.
Yes, he was super intelligent, and he said that he always felt like he was intelligent. He just never really put the work in.
Yeah, never really channeled it into anything as far as school or sports until he got a little bit older,
yes.
like a Herschel Walker almost, as we talked about. Said he really didn't, take school seriously until he was in middle school. But by the end of high school, he was the San Diego Union Tribunes on their all-academic team. Also a great athlete. At age 12, got a brown belt in Taekwondo, getting a little Jean-Claude Van Damme action, which speaks to his athleticism.
Yes.
Attended Patrick Henry High School in San Diego. Played baseball, football, track, and wrestled, which was pretty cool. Said he wrestled the future Patriots offensive lineman Stephen Neal.
Yeah.
So he must have been competing in those
at a high
heavyweight,
level. Yes.
those heavyweight divisions of like 190 plus.
Yeah.
Baseball, was a third baseman and an outfielder. Made All-State as a senior, which obviously, much like Cecil Fielder, pretty incredible. On the football field, played outside linebacker, strong safety, and running back. And that's where Ricky was really awesome.
Well, we see this coming up because, let's get into where he goes. So he ends up going to the University of Texas.
Oh, can I bring up a couple things about high school?
You got more high school stuff?
I got some high school stats
here.
Yeah. 4,129 rush yards, and he had 2,099 of them in his senior year with 25 touchdowns. Was first team All-Eastern League from the San Diego Union Tribune, and he took not so great team all the way to the championship game.
Yes.
Just kind of and he had his pick of colleges.
I was just going to say, we see this in high school where guys are so dominant that they literally take a bunch of me's and you's to the state championship.
Exactly. Yay, just give the ball to Ricky.
We did it, guys.
Did we? Didn't he, Lisa? Didn't he?
Didn't he?
So He goes to Texas, but at the same time, because he's such a good baseball player, he's getting his entire scholarship paid by playing minor league ball for the Phillies.
This is what I wanted to bring up that I found so interesting, because he was such a prospect that the Phillies drafted him right away. And they were like, we'll pay for your scholarship. You just on the off season, you come play for our minor league team. And if this is your future, we want to be the first ones in that. And I remember somebody saying, though, with him going to Texas, they were like, how did the schools in California let him leave the state? It was one of those
That's
where
weird to me,
because he had to have been recruited ridiculously high, but USC, all
UCLA,
these, all of them, yeah.
He has his pick of any school, so he chooses Texas, which is like they're kind of mediocre, I think.
Yes, yeah. I don't think they were, and he comes in and
he breaks a record in his first game against Hawaii. I remember watching this game because I always used to get to stay up late whenever they'd show UH games. So he started as a true freshman.
As a fullback.
Priest Holmes is hurt. Also, we should do an episode on him. He was awesome. 95 yards. And then that first season, Texas rapidly improves. They end up winning, I think, 9 or 10 games and going to the Sugar Bowl that year, where they lose to Virginia Tech. But he has 166 carries, 990 yards, and 8 touchdowns, and most importantly, Southwestern Conference Freshman of the Year, last of which to do that, and also breaks Earl Campbell's freshman rushing record. Those of you who don't know who he is, he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and won a Heisman Trophy. So
it's all, everybody's looking at Ricky like, this is the future of, this program for at least the next 2 years.
Well, he's 5'10", 230, and chiseled.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. And that was the thing, was he always was this just straight up.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
That's the only way to describe him.
And that's the way his running game is.
Is a 3-down back, too, because not only does he run the ball, but he pass blocks well, and he has really great hands for somebody his size.
Good football intelligence. He is like the running back that you want.
Oh, yeah, especially in this era, too.
Yes.
96, 1,272 rush yards. He went over 100 yards in 7 of the games, and they go to the Fiesta Bowl where they lose to the Fightin' Sandusky's of Penn State. But he sets a Fiesta Bowl record with 9 catches.
I thought that was interesting, and it shows that he is more than just a running back or you know what I mean? Like we were just saying, he has all these tools that you can use, and then going into his junior year.
Oh, his junior year,
I feel like everybody was looking at him as like, oh, this is his showcase for the NFL.
They're like, this is going to be his last year in college because he's that much of a badass.
Yep.
1,893 rush yards, 25 rushing touchdowns. He sets a school record for single season for rush yards, carries, rush touchdowns, and broke the school career record for rushing TDs with 5 in a game against Rice.
Against Rice, yeah.
Which, it's Rice, but it's still college football, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sets Big 12 records in all-purpose yards for 2,000 with 2,043, and finishes 5th in the Heisman and is a unanimous All-American. And you'd think, well, this is still when running backs can go in the first round, and he's probably going top 10.
I wanted to bring this up because I found this kind of interesting where early in his life, he said when he envisioned himself playing football, it never was in an NFL jersey.
Yeah.
It was always in different college football jerseys. So when he said he was making this decision to do his 4th year at Texas, he was just like, well, this was always what I envisioned.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to give it up, which everybody thought was crazy.
He's a guy who sticks to his guns, though.
Yes.
We'll see.
I love his attitude towards a team and towards that kind of shit. But, he literally could have came out in top 10. They were saying even top 5, which is so much guaranteed money. We'll see, not necessarily.
And at that position, and when you're the focal point of an offense, the chance for injury exceeds almost every other one on the field.
Yes.
And it's not like he had to come back because he's only 2 years out of high school. He chooses to come back. And after a down year in 97 for the Longhorns as a whole, dear God. I did want to add, though, he signed an almost $3 million insurance policy.
I did see that.
In case injury or something came up.
In case injury and his draft stock would drop. It was a huge insurance policy, but that's how fucked up college sports is. So they're like, no, you can come back, play for free. Here's an insurance policy we're going to put on you. It's just like, All right.
Well, we didn't always live in the days of the NIL, Chris. We lived in the days of the student athletes.
Let me tell you something about a student athlete.
Oh, y'all have them here too.
Oh, sir, you are brilliant.
A jacuzzi filled with Kentucky Fried Chicken gravy. So his first game of the year, he scores 6 touchdowns against New Mexico State. Granted, it's New Mexico State, but it's still college football.
It's still another record-breaking touchdown. And just like this stamp on this season, him coming back and being like, I'm going to be the best running back you've ever seen.
And also lost in the shuffle of all of this is he has an outside shot of breaking Tony Dorsett's then NCAA record for career rushing yards.
Yep.
So in the following game against UCLA, who were probably kicking themselves, why the hell did we not recruit or get this guy? Breaks Earl Campbell's record for rush yards. They end up losing the game to UCLA, though. I think UCLA won their first 11 that year. But anyway, sidebar. He scored 6 touchdowns against Rice.
Against Rice. That's just how it goes against Rice.
Oh, I got a good story about Rice my dad told me from a long time ago. But he has 344 points and is Texas's all-time leading scorer, and then the NCAA Division 1A points record holder with 428. That's amazing. The guy just gets it in the end zone.
Yeah.
And then we come to November 27th, 1998, where they're playing Texas A&M in a rivalry game with Matthew McConaughey on the sidelines. I got to tell you this story. Okay. We're at Rockabilly a couple of years ago, and they're showing this game.
Yeah.
And they're showing Matthew McConaughey and Ricky Williams, and as I'll get into later with Ricky Williams. So I was with Quinn at the bar, and I was like, can you imagine how that conversation went down with Ricky just like, hi, Matthew. Hey, Ricky Williams, what's going on there, big cat? I'm just like, hey, you want to blaze in my car later? It'd be a lot cooler if you did. Why don't you go out there and break some NCAA rushing records? You know what I'm talking about, big cat. Hey. Let's go party at Lake Austin with some titties. All right, that sounds good.
That sounds good.
Anyway, so they're playing Texas A&M. He breaks the record on a 60-yard run. Mm-hmm. And if you ever watch this run, it's absolutely incredible. He finishes his career with 7,206 rushing yards in 4 years. That's insane. That's freaking crazy. That's...
Some of the best running you'll ever see for a college, and that was the thing about him coming back in his 4th year.
Yeah,
was he wanted to make that.
That's 1,800 yards a season, basically.
Yeah, and literally in the first, I would say 2, he wasn't giving that 1,800. That's what's kind of crazy.
No.
In the final 2, he was, but that's the thing was he literally gave them $8 million season for free. I'm just saying, that's the kind of thing that you see with this is he came back to Texas and he wins the Heisman. That was the other thing that he said was one of the things that he wanted.
Yeah, and Doak Walker presented it to him, and over that season, he developed a good relationship with Doak Walker's family. We talked about him in the Norman Van Brocklin episode. He led the NCAA in rush yards per game. Unanimous All-American. They win the Cotton Bowl, where he had 248 all-purpose in it. And he broke or tied 21 Division 1A records during his career, 24 Big 12, and 46 Texas ones. They retired his number. That's how good this guy was.
Yes.
It was like a Sterling Sharp scenario where it's like, you're still playing, so yeah, we'll retire it for you. College Football Hall of Fame.
He comes out as possibly the greatest college football running back ever. That's the thing with his stats, I think he was the first player ever to go back-to-back the Walker Award, best running back.
Doak Walker 2 in a row, yeah. The first number, the 7,206, that's his all-purpose. His rush yards were 6,592, 75 touchdowns, 2,327 receiving yards, 29 touchdowns in his final season, and he had 988 career receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. He scored 79 touchdowns, and that's almost 20 a season.
It's crazy.
So now he's going to definitely be a top NFL pick because he can't go back to Texas. They won't let you play 5 years. I'm sure they would have loved another season of free labor, but they don't get it. So now we get in to the 99 offseason, basically, leading into the 1999 NFL season. He's thought to be a top 5 pick. he forgoes his workout at the combine and chooses to have it in San Diego. Eric Dickerson was there watching it, and he said, he's like Earl Campbell, only faster, which is scary as shit for opposing tacklers.
I'll say this because he ends up not going as the number one running back.
No.
There was some weight discrepancy in the offseason where
he showed up to the combine heavy.
He showed up to the combine 20 pounds over, and then when he worked out for a team, he was like 20 pounds lighter. And they were saying, like, is that how you're going to be in the off season? There was this kind of thought of being like, what's his mental state? Because, you know what I mean?
He's an introspective and
quiet guy.
He marches to the beat of his own drum, which can turn some teams off.
Yes,
which is unfortunate because, you know, he'd have those interviews with his helmet on because of the personality thing he had. And, well, he managed to impress one of the many coaches at his pro day. And the name of that coach was Hurricane Ditka. And Hurricane Ditka wants to go full hog with Ricky Williams.
Well, he sees that he's still available on the 5th pick.
Well, what happened was in this draft, it wasn't just the Saints who called the Redskins for the 5th pick. They didn't call just Washington. They called the top 5 teams.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a huge mistake for the Browns because they're an expansion team and they needed all of the capital they could get. If you need to learn any more about that, listen to our Tim Couch episode. So what Ditka was essentially offering was all of their picks in the 99 draft and their 1st and 3rd in 2000.
Yep.
The Browns say no. The Eagles say no. At least they took Donovan McNabb. That is not the guy from the Cosby Show. I had to. They offer the Cincinnati Bengals all of that deal, and they say, no, we're good with Akili Smith. And the Colts at 4 need a running back because they just traded Marshall Faulk to the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
But the Colts at 4 say, we're really impressed with that Edgerrin James guy who's now currently in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not Ricky Williams.
Which they
took a lot of heat for that,
I was
too.
just going to say,
Even
they
though
took
James
so much
was
shit.
An absolute beast, including his final games at Miami.
To pick him over because Ricky was, like I said, he had all of these, like he's coming out as the best, but turns out it was the right pick. And then I thought this was interesting. It was the first time that a team gave up literally the rest of their picks to get one guy. So the Saints didn't pick again for the whole 99 draft.
Which is incredible. Like, that's just completely insane, but it happened. It actually, like Talladega, that just happened. Now you see me, now you don't. So anyway, he goes. This is the idiocy of the Saints, though, is they're already a bad team. You've just completely drained all of your draft capital to help improve it for one guy.
Yes.
And one guy who's not a quarterback. Granted, Ricky Williams, incredible player, but how many wins a season is he worth to your team? With nothing else.
That's the thing, is he needs shit to be built around him.
Yeah. And there's not a lot being built around him, save for maybe Kyle Turley on that New Orleans offense at this juncture. So they have the whole ESPN, the magazine cover. You remember that?
I was just going to say, this is possibly, I don't know who the PR department is for the Saints, but this is possibly the stupidest thing I've ever seen a football team do, where they have Ditka dress up like the groom and Ricky dress up like a bride, so he has a dress on, and then
look good in that dress.
The fodder that created for opposing teams, it's insane. I remember,
but you know what?
We watched stuff though. The only thing that they could cut was, "Where's your dress? You look like a lady." You could only imagine the stuff that was being said to him.
Oh, the men of their time had a field day, Chris.
I'm just saying. I don't know who in the Saints, like even Ditka said, I don't know how they got you to agree to this. Ditka said that to him on the day.
Well, it's just crazy.
It's his special day.
But you know what? This is the heyday of athletes wearing wedding dresses. Remember Dennis Rodman?
That's true. It was a very similar Rodman dress.
Yeah, very similar.
Now insert a type of wedding dress. You got your joke.
There you go. All right. So Ricky has an odd contract negotiation as well. Do you want to get into this?
So he signs with No Limit Soldier Sports Agency, which everybody was saying, which is Master P, which was a rapper at the time.
Yeah.
Everybody was saying, Master P is your Master P is your agent, which wasn't true. It was just a company that Master P owned that had agents in it. So he had a legitimate agent.
This was like the heyday of rappers wanting to get involved with sports too.
But it sounded like Master P, which was his agent, which I loved.
Yeah. So what ends up happening, instead of signing a normal, well, I shouldn't say normal, because this is the era of the NFL where rookies would hold out forever.
Yes,
to
that's true.
Maximize their contracts. What Ricky ends up doing with No Limits is he signs a 7-year contract worth $11.1 million and a guaranteed $8.84 million signing bonus. The reason this contract is weird is it was all incentive laden. Like, he could have earned up to $68.4 million if he hit all of these incentives. And in Ricky's mind, and this is where we get into it again.
Yep.
He said, I wanted the 8.84 because that's what I earned for playing in college football. The rest I wanted to earn on my own in the NFL, which is why it was incentive laden, which would have been nice. And he did prove to be one of the NFL's best running backs. The problem was his rookie year, he gets hurt. He sprains his ankle in preseason and struggles with injuries all year, and he made only $125,000.
Well, just to put it in perspective, he should have came out and had number 1, number 2 rookie contract of money. He has this contract that's incentive based, and he ends up not playing, so he has no base for incentives, and
you can't reach those milestones if you can't get on the field.
He gets paid literally the league minimum. Yeah. So, and that's what
the league minimum.
And that's and that's what people were saying was why this was such a bad contract, and then it blows back into No Limit and being like, oh, you have this horrible agency representing you.
And granted, now there are tons of players who sign contracts like this that are incentive laden. But something like this had never been seen before. And after 1 year, he signs with Lee Steinberg of Jerry Maguire kind of fame.
I was just going to say of a real sports agency.
Yeah. So, and the Saints are dog shit in 1999. I think they would have had the 2nd overall pick that year.
But they gave it up.
They gave it away for Ricky. Hurricane Ditka is no more. The eye of the storm has passed. But in 2000, and I should point out, Ricky had 884 rush yards and a couple touchdowns his rookie year, which is pretty good considering he only played in 12 games and played hurt. But in 2000, things start to turn around, as we discussed in our Kyle Turley episode. In 10 games, Ricky reaches 1,000 yards on the ground. The team's improving around him with Jeff Blake and Aaron Brooks in quarterback. You got Turley on that offensive line and an improving defense. 8 touchdowns, over 400 yards receiving and a touchdown. But the problem is he misses their entire playoff run because he breaks his ankle against the Panthers. And this is starting to come at a time where the Saints are maybe resenting him a little bit.
I was just going to say, I found it really interesting. I saw an interview with him where he really doesn't hold anything back, and he said he was such a Ditka guy, so Ditka gave away the store to get him, and then they had
the players resented the fuck out of that. Like, why aren't you helping us?
They had this stupid photo shoot of them being married. So he's like, I'm married to the last coach. So now the new coaching staff comes in, and they're like, okay, so we have this guy. We have no picks. And the team is really resentful towards him.
So, and I think in 2001, they take running back Deuce McAllister in the first round. And granted, Ricky's still the number 1 guy, but you're kind of starting to see them. He's not getting a second contract with New Orleans.
I was just going to say they set this up to have him as trade fodder.
Yeah, so which is smart on their part.
It's not crazy because
Let's get some of those picks back.
Yeah, they get the picks back, and they show how productive he can be because he's still the number 1 running back.
And he's healthy this year. He has 313 carries, 1,245 yards, and 6 touchdowns. A career-high 60 catches, 511 yards, and a touchdown, and was NFC Offensive Player of the Month in October.
Yeah.
Saints just missed the playoffs, but in 2002... they're ready to start giving the ball to Deuce McAllister and getting some of those picks back. And they find a willing participant, March 8th, 2002. 4 draft picks, including 2 first-rounders, go to the Dolphins, along with a 4th-round pick coming back from New Orleans to Miami. And Ricky's on a new team. And this is probably the golden age of his career, these next 2 seasons, I'll say. Because the team around him is decent, and they're just feeding him the ball.
I was just going to say,
they don't have a I think they have Jay Fiedler as their quarterback, so you know where the ball is going.
Yes.
They have a big, mean offensive line, and in 2002, 353 carries. He leads the league in rushing in yards per carry this year. 1,853 yards, 4.8 yards a carry, 16 touchdowns, 89 first downs, 47 catches, 363 yards, and a touchdown. First team AP All-Pro.
So he pretty much is saying that he can be this ridiculously great running back,
just put
top 3 running back in the NFL for his era.
A little talent around me and don't make me wear a dress.
And this is where Miami kind of falters, is what he says too. This is the thing, is he talks about these teams so openly. He's just like,
he's an open book though.
Yeah,
he's honest.
He felt like everything was going like we're putting all these pieces together. He was getting all the carries in the world, and then they just wouldn't get a quarterback.
Nope.
Or essentially like
a passing game.
Any other kind of passing game, any other kind of offensive, like they were just like, no, you're good. We're going to be right outside of the playoffs.
You mean to tell me Mike Ditka Jr. and Dave Wanstead, less successful Mike Ditka Jr., can't find a quarterback? No. 2003, he leads the league in carries with 392.
Yep.
And I want to bring up these carries when we get into another aspect of his career very shortly. 1,372 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns, 50 catches and a TD. And then we get into some interesting things.
Well,
leading into 2004, and specifically some of these issues arising because of the amount of workload that he had.
So you brought up in Texas, him and the wonderful man Matthew, like they were smoking weed back on those Longhorn days.
Hey Ricky, why don't you tie those dreadlocks up and then we can go and party?
I don't want you to light them on fire, but that's the thing is, he said he never smoked weed in college.
Like Kyle Turley never smoked weed in college.
And when he got to the NFL, the amount of damage on his body, they were trying to pump him with pills. And just the type of person he was very like, you could see he was very like trying to be like natural and like that kind of shit. He said he just was one of the guys in the locker room with a couple other guys that just straight up turned to weed. And that was the only thing that was kind of he would do.
Which is smart, because when adding up just 2 seasons of work in Miami, he had 745 carries in addition to those 50 catches and 97 catches. So essentially, he's touched the ball in 2 seasons what I would say 60% of running backs now don't even have in a career.
Well, and that was what he said, was he was leading the NFL by like a huge margin in attempts, and he could see that it wasn't going to work out for him doing this year after year.
And pumping himself with opiates provided by the team.
So
which he opted for a more natural remedy.
Well, he gets busted earlier in the season for
in 2003. He had pissed
weed.
hot.
Yeah, and they don't make it public.
No, because your first one at this time, they don't make it public. They're just like, we're going to be testing you a hell of a lot more for X amount of years because you pissed hot.
Yes.
May 14th, 2004, he tests positive again, is subject to a $650,000 fine and 4-game suspension. And you're thinking, okay, this is May. He's out for 4 games. And then later that summer in July, before training camp, he tests positive again for a 3rd time.
So, and this is what I find, and it's hard to know where the fault is, if the fault is with the Dolphins.
You need a fall guy, Chris.
Do you know what I mean with this? Where
when the
second time he pisses hot and you're like, look, you're our starting running back. You're literally our entire offense. Something needs to happen here.
And look, I am very pro-weed, but if your employer tells you not to do it, and granted, these punishments are draconian, I will say, for this particular substance, but they are what they are.
Yes.
And you know about them at the time. You gotta find someone with clean urine, bro.
Or
or just Ontario Smith it with a Whizzinator. Come on, man.
It's insane. So he and this is what I found interesting was after he pissed hot for the second time, he started talking about retiring with his friends and family, and he was just like, "Yeah, I just wondering what the end is going to be for me." And he said if he pissed hot again, he doesn't know if he was going to go back.
Which makes you wonder if it's intentional, this third one.
That's what I was thinking. If he was just smoking as much weed as he could.
Just like, I need a season off, man.
Yeah.
Like, so August 2nd, 2004, he ends up retiring, which is crazy. But at that time, he studies Ayurveda. I can't pronounce it. It's an ancient Indian holistic medicine healing type of thing. Actually, Sylvia met him through one of these classes.
One of our friends. It's like a energy exchange kind of.
She said he's like one of the most interesting people she's ever met, and I can totally understand why after researching this.
I thought this was interesting. So he retires from the Dolphins. The Dolphins actually sue him for their
they do
for their signing bonus
money.
But he said in like the months following this retirement, because he like kind of travels the world. He goes to India, he goes to Australia, he goes to like all these places. He was like, I lived more in those months than I did in the 27 years before. And he said
it was the most positive thing to find himself.
Yes. He said that he never wanted to, what he was talking about was like, he never wanted to go against himself again. Like what he wanted to do was what he wanted to do. He didn't want to like play football essentially when he wasn't.
When he didn't want to play football.
When he didn't want it.
Yeah. Like he wanted to live his life on his own terms, and I respect the hell out of that.
Yes.
July 24th, 2005, he comes back, pays back some of his signing bonus, serves his 4-game suspension, and in 12 games, because in 2004, after he leaves, the Dolphins bottom out.
Yes.
They completely bottom out. I think they end up with the second pick in 2005, and instead of taking Aaron Rodgers, they take another running back, Ronnie Brown, who we'll come back to later, to replace him, and he has 168 carries, 743 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And then in 2006, what happens, Chris?
He decides to. I wonder how much they're testing him at this point, because I imagine it's still a ton. But he pisses hot again.
Well, this is a controversial one, though. I wanted to.
Ones. Yes.
Yeah.
So this one's weird.
February 20th, 2006, violates the substance abuse policy, but it might not have been because he pissed hot, but he might have missed the drug test.
Yeah.
And when you miss a drug test, they automatically count it as positive because he was off, I believe his mom said he was in India at that time. It's like, here, I can send it to you, Federal Express.
Which, this is my thing again with the Dolphins organization. Does it come back to them, or is it too much of babysitting these guys? Do you know what I mean?
I know it's the babysitting, but they signed up for this.
Yeah.
They could have just as easily cut or traded him by this point. I mean, at that point, I think it falls more on the organization because you know he's going to do whatever the hell he wants.
That's what I mean. So, like, you know he's going to be in India for an off-season. Whatever the fuck the situation is, you really have to be on top of that.
Where in the world is Ricky San Diego? Makes even more sense.
Ricky San Diego. But that's the thing is, like, this is what I keep coming back on, and also they don't really bust guys for weed anymore. But, like, just saying if Ricky was playing now, it would be different. It's such a different era 20 years ago.
Which is crazy to think how much times have changed in 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, now it's just like, I can go to the weed store. So he goes to play up in Canada in 2006 with the Toronto Argonauts on the condition that he comes back to the Dolphins in 2007.
So they let him play a year in Canada while he's serving his suspension.
Found out an interesting story about Joe Theismann. Did you see this?
I was just going to say, and then as soon as he goes up there, it's just drama, which I imagine as Ricky as a person, he absolutely hates what happens when he goes up to Toronto. Reading it, I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Oh, yeah. So Joe Theismann, who we did an episode on, said he was disgraced that his former team would sign a drug addict. But Joe Theismann has some skeletons in his family's closet.
Well, the Toronto... the owner comes out and he was just like, why are you talking shit? You, Joe, when your son is a drug addict and you're just like, oh my God. And this is the thing, you don't hear any quotes from Ricky because it's them
Ricky avoids all that. He has like my attitude on social media. Yeah. I don't comment for shit.
It's literally them two, Joe and the owner, going back and forth about Ricky, and Ricky's silent, and it is some legitimately low blow, like,
it's
shit.
Mean. It's fucking trollish behavior. And Ricky's like, I just want to play football, guys. March 28th, 2006, he's the highest paid CFL running back because they play in the summertime because it's sub-zero Canada. July 22nd, 2006, he has some injuries in Canada, which kind of hamper him. Broke his left arm, which is a football injury. And then he's has a gash in the back of his leg near his Achilles tendon that needs 16 stitches because a door swung on him.
Yeah, I saw that, which is wild.
But finishes the year with 526 rush yards and 2 TDs. And it also set in place a new CFL rule called the Ricky Williams rule, where CFL teams are prohibited from signing NFL players who are serving any suspensions. And they grandfathered people in like Bernard Williams, who were already in the league previous, but the CFL said no more,
Yeah.
But 2007, he comes back to the Miami Dolphins, and after serving his suspension, everything's going right. He gets to debut on Monday Night Football, and this is arguably, if you know anything about this game, it's one of the worst NFL games that have ever been played due to weather conditions and how sloppy the game was. They're playing the Steelers at Heinz Field, which is well known for being an absolute slop fest as far as turf maintenance. There's so much rain, nobody can move or do anything, and during the game, Ricky's right shoulder is stepped on by Lawrence Timmons and has a torn pectoral muscle and is out for 2007. He misses the whole year after like less than a game that ends in 3-0 on the final play of overtime being a game-winning field goal. The amount of times I yelled at my television set for them to stop the game during said game, it was an embarrassment. Go watch that on the internet and you will agree with me.
This is when Bill Parcells takes over in Miami, right?
Heading into 2008.
2008, yeah. Because he comes back, and I thought this was interesting.
This is a great comeback story the next few years.
Well, Bill comes into the team meeting place, and he's like, a lot of you guys have been like injured. You're probably not going to be a part of our team next year. A lot of you guys have off-field stuff. You're not going to be. So like Ricky's literally thinking he's like,
any names.
Well, he's like literally like, oh, so he's talking about me. I just got suspended. I just got injured.
Yeah.
And then Bill calls him into the office, and he says the first thing he says to him is, I believe that you can be the starting running back for my team. And that's when Ricky was like,
the genius of Parcells.
Yes. And that's what he said. He was just like, no. And that gave him that kind of like revigorated confidence that Viagra can give a man.
Absolutely. I should mention that 2007 season for the Dolphins, 1-15.
Yeah.
They had a miracle overtime win against the Ravens. That was it.
Yeah.
Kind of wishing they would have taken Matt Ryan there in the 2008 draft, but because they take Jake Long and their offensive line is good and Cam Cameron is no longer coaching them, they also have a little wrinkle in their offense because this is the first year of the Wildcat in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
And the Dolphins are the team to exclusively run it with Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown, and Chad Pennington is there because the old dong slinger took his job up in New York. So that year, the Dolphins go 11-5. Ricky has 659 rush yards and 4 touchdowns and a receiving touchdown and 219 yards, and they make the playoffs. They win the AFC East. This is the only year between like 2003 and maybe a couple of years ago that the Patriots did not win that division. Granted, this was the year Tom Brady was hurt, but still.
I'll say this,
awesome.
in this off season and like building up in these off seasons. He's doing a lot of like we were talking about
yoga, meditation.
Yeah, and he says at this point he'd actually stopped smoking weed and was fully into yoga. He was like a yogi, and he's doing meditation.
He was going vegan at this point.
And he was vegan. And I think they say the only thing that's not vegan that he eats is Greek yogurt, which I thought was weird, but like that's it. That's the only thing that is a animal byproduct. But to think of he's that big of a guy, and
here's the thing. If you're going to be a vegan, you have to be rich almost to be healthy.
To be healthy, yes.
To have the right amount of right stuff in your diet because you can afford it. You know what I mean?
Yes, seriously.
Yeah, it's not all Impossible Burgers, but
I'll do it.
Sounds like a challenge.
Whoa. Do we just get challenged by the audience? It's not impossible.
Come in here with like Burger King next week.
Just dumping it on the table.
How do you like that, assholes?
I think this is a real one. Oh my God, it's delicious.
It's bleeding, but it's so good. So 2009, Dolphins are still pretty competitive, but Brown is injured in the 9th game, so a bulk of the carries go to Mr. Ricky.
Yeah.
241 carries, 1,121 yards and 11 touchdowns, 35 grabs for 2 touchdowns, and I did want to bring this up. It is the longest span between 1,000-yard seasons in NFL history.
I loved that statistic. I was going to bring it up right now because think of I love it because to think of where he was, where everybody was like, here's our franchise. This is going to be what this Miami Dolphins is. To him retiring, pissing hot, getting suspended for all of this shit.
Yeah, people just going like, you're a monster.
Yeah, all of this shit to him coming back and having another 1,000-yard season. I love it so much. Yeah.
He was only the 9th guy in NFL history to start his 32-year-old season and rush for 1,000 yards. That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, I think a lot of it speaks to just his fitness. And then again, when you're suspended for an entire year, you're not getting the shit pounded out of you.
That's very true, especially for a running back.
2010, 673 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. In 2011, though, the Dolphins decided to get a little bit younger at running back.
Yeah.
And
move on from him.
He's still got some left in the tank, so he signs with the Baltimore Ravens for $2.5 million and is backing up Ray Rice this year. 444 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. They would have made the Super Bowl this year if not for a Lee Evans drop in the end zone and a Billy Cundiff missed kick.
Yes.
Sending New England there. Why must you do that?
Why
Baltimore?
must you tease me?
Why must you? Yeah. So, but it was cool because the Super Bowl the following year, because he got really into photography, the Ravens actually made it there, and he was like on the sidelines taking pictures professionally.
I was gonna say, so they actually hired him as a professional photographer, so he's on the sidelines talking with former teammates, and they were telling him, they were like, "You were on this team, you built this," and like that's kind of what it is.
Exactly.
Especially with football, you were on at the team before. I thought it was pretty cool that he was into all of these other things like photography and yoga and
like energy healing and stuff. But I mean, that's just like the type of mind that he had. Just like, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want.
Exactly.
Do what makes me happy.
Yep.
It doesn't affect anybody else. It's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Career stats. 2,431 carries, 10,009 career rushing yards. Considering the amount of time that guy missed, if you had those first 2 seasons in Miami, granted, he probably wouldn't have played for as long, you'd be talking probably like 14,000 career rushing yards.
It's crazy. It's a career that if it had it today, it would be different. That's the thing that's kind of crazy when you think about it, because he's not like a guy that transcends football-wise. He's a guy that transcends like off the field
culture almost.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the types of stats that he had definitely lived up to getting picked 5th. Trading away all your draft picks, maybe not. But by that same token, like 10,000 career rushing yards, that's not a lot of people in NFL history.
No, that's
66 rush touchdowns, 92 catches, and 8 touchdowns. I mean, Ricky Williams amazing player, but a fascinating person. That's the only thing I can really say.
That's
about
something
him.
that I distinctly remember, especially when he retired from Miami and they were like, oh, he's retiring so he could smoke weed. And then like all of these stories that came out, there were all these different...
It was this false narrative at a time in America where people didn't understand cannabis.
And then
basically.
we see him have this redemption story where he comes back to Miami, has great seasons, and really fulfills him as one of the better running backs of this little era. Especially, I always remember him in that Texas uniform. That's how I always think of him.
It's what he always thought he would be in,
well,
right?
It's just one of those things where it's just like that's where I remember him just eating people up in his senior year. There was actually 2 rules made by him.
Right.
One in CFL, one in NFL.
Yeah. Go ahead.
In NFL, you can tackle a guy by his dreads because of Ricky Williams' dreads, because guys are doing it, and they were like, well, is that legal? And they're like, yeah, I mean, it's part of them.
Well, they called it part of the jersey. I've seen a couple times Polamalu get taken down like that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Just an enigma of a cool dude, I feel like. But yeah, he now he's onto his yoga and energy healing journey, probably traveling the world with all that sweet money that he made.
Yeah, and he does talks, and like we were saying, the yoga, he does retreats, and just all kinds of stuff like that, which it makes sense for the type of person that he is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Ricky Williams.
Thank you.